Hello, 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 everybody. My name is Linda. I'm your back in the groove again coach, calling all the way from Ottawa. Well, actually, near Ottawa. I live in a small town just on the outskirts of Ottawa. Although this picture here that I chose for today's live is taken in Mexico. This year, I was in Mexico for 2 months. I was there mid-January till mid-March, and I had to come back a week earlier because of the COVID-19. But what a great time that was. Anyways, that's not what I want to talk about today. My my focus today is to go back to my series of what I wish I would have known back then. And this one's a bit of a personal nature, and I'll tell you why. Hello, who's joining me? Thanks for watching. You could type your name in the chat box if you're okay with that. So the reason I want to talk about this one in particular is because I was contacted this morning by a new Facebook friend. Her name is Linda. And at the end of our conversation, she brought up something really, really important. And that's the fact that a lot of women who have been abused don't know their worth. And that's what I want to talk about during my live today. I'll talk a little bit about what I wish I would have known back then. Now, I'm not going to get into the specifics, of course, but what I wish I would have known back then is that I am worthy of so much. So let me give you a little bit of a background. When I was a kid, 10, 11, I guess, something like that, I was abused. Now, at the time, I didn't think it was abuse. You know, my mother was in another room. Hello, who's watching? My mother was in another room with someone. And, you know, at the time, I was really young, and I blamed my mom for a lot of this stuff, which if I would have known back then, it really wasn't her fault, because more than likely she had been abused as well. But, you know, we just didn't talk about that back then. But at the time, my mom would bring me to the bars with her. And I know it sounds terrible. It really does sound terrible. And she would bring me to, it wasn't just the bars, it was the, oh, I can't remember. I can't remember the name of the place, but it doesn't matter. The point is that I remember that one night bringing home a man. And the minute he found out how old I was, he left. And I felt so unloved for some strange reason. Prior to that, when I was living with my grandparents, because when I was a kid, I lived with my grandparents prior, you know, so during that time when I was around 10, 11, parents got divorced when I was 10, so I moved in with my grandmother. There were a couple of men, and at the time they looked so much older, but they weren't. They were probably, I don't know, 18, 19. I don't know how old they were. But they took advantage of me. They really did. And at the time, I didn't know what that was. You know, I didn't know it was abuse. All I know is that it felt nice to be wanted, to be told that you're so cute, you're so lovely. You know, it felt good at the time, and you know, now I understand it much better. But fast forward to many, many years later, where I got into relationships. I think I might have shared in another live that I've been married a few times. And all of these marriages were all because of not really knowing what love was, not really knowing. Now, I don't want to focus so much on that aspect of it, but it's these symptoms of abuse that are not really, you're not really aware of what the symptoms are. So, you know, I was abused, and I just know that I became a workaholic. I got into relationships that weren't really for me, that I didn't really know who I was, that I lost myself in every relationship. every relationship, and that that I was afraid to kind of, and it wasn't like I'm afraid of these men that I was with, because these men that I was with, my husbands, were good guys. I didn't recognize it as them being good guys, which is another, I think, symptom or a side effect of being abused. And so we go on through life not really knowing the impact of the abuse that we suffered when we were younger. And so we try things and we fail, and we don't believe in ourselves enough to want to continue. And I guess that's what I wish I would have known back then. First of all, I wish I would have known the impact of that abuse. Now, I did go through counseling, and that really helped. So if you are listening and you have been abused, and you're noticing these different patterns, and patterns such as, I was promiscuous too. I didn't share that at all in another live, but I was promiscuous. And this is really, really personal stuff here, but when I was married, I wasn't very faithful. So all of these things that I did, okay, all of these things that I did. And of course, at that time, I would feel really, really guilty of doing that. There was a lot of things, okay? So who's joining me and who's listening to my really personal story right now? You could say hi. Thanks for joining. I really appreciate it. You can type in your name. Hi. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you. Hi, Hashak. So the point is not for me to talk about, the abuse, but it's to share with you the impact that it had in my life, and how often women, and I must say that it's not just women that go through abuse, and more men now are revealing that they've been abused and the impact that it's had on their lives. Terrible, So, okay, Vanda, thanks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for showing up. So, it's the impact, and we don't realize the impact that it has on our lives, whether you're male or female, until you've gone through this repetitive pattern of failing. And believe me, I've learned to not look at my life as failures and a series of failures. I've had to look at my life as a series of lessons that I needed to learn. And I wish I would have known that a lot sooner, that everything that I've gone through in my life, including the abuse when I was a young girl, that I didn't call abuse back then, but I mentioned a few minutes ago that I went through counseling. And let me tell you a little bit about how that happened. This was many years ago. Oh, I don't know, 5-10 years ago. I can't remember the specifics. I was staying at my dad's because at that time I had left my job, and I was, I hate to say homeless for a few weeks, but I didn't have an apartment. So I was kind of in between apartments, and I stayed at my dad, and we had a conversation. And I was noticing that in our conversation, I was getting upset. And I was saying, yeah, but where were you during this time? I was talking about when I was 10 years old and how these things happened to me. And he didn't know that. He had no idea that I had been abused. Of course, I didn't say abused. I said I was taken advantage of. And I'm noticing that as I'm talking to him, I'm getting upset because I'm saying, where were you? How come you didn't know? And I was noticing that I was getting upset with my dad. Here I am in my 50s. Okay, yeah, I was in my 50s. Oh, maybe not 50s, maybe late 40s. Oh, the age doesn't matter. Has this ever happened to you, that you're noticing that you're really getting upset with a conversation that has nothing to do maybe with the other person. So as I'm noticing these feelings of frustration and getting more into the why I was upset, but this is what happened to me, and I'm explaining it to him, I'm noticing that I have a need to talk about it. And that's when I decided to call the Sudbury Sexual Assault Center, because I was living in Sudbury at the time, and make an appointment. Now I have to tell you that I compared my abuse to other abuse, and I thought it wasn't abuse. I thought it was simply a man taking advantage of me. Yeah, well, a man who was much older than me asking me to touch his groin area, even though it was over pants, is abuse, no matter what you call it. Anyways, all of that to say that I went through a series of different learnings at the time. And I wish I would have known back then that everything that I went through, the abuse and the multiple relationships that I went through, helped me to become the woman that I am today, but also helped me to develop empathy and compassion for a lot of the clients that I serve. I still want to say hi. Who's joining me today? Please give a shout out, say hello. And I know I don't normally reveal a lot of personal things on my lives, but after talking to Linda, and this was just a chat through Messenger, I realized again that there are so many women out there, and this is why I do market my services to women. There are so many women out there that have been abused that may not realize the impact of their abuse. And so one is get help if you think it's really holding you back. Now, a lot of women, we do our own healing through different ways, but somehow that those symptoms always seem to creep in, and it's really about our mindset and forgiving and accepting and loving ourselves first. I really do believe that that's what it boils down to. And I started, talking more about loving ourselves first a few years back, especially after I had been divorced again, a second time. I've been married 3 times, divorced twice. First marriage was, I was a widow. I was 21. And so after those relationships that I failed, who's joining me? Say hello, please. It's really nice of you to join me. Can anyone identify with what I'm talking about? And I know you're probably catching me at the end. You just got on, but I'm wondering if you can identify with what I'm talking about. Now, sometimes it's not just, I'm talking more about sexual abuse, but physical abuse, any kind of emotional abuse. I would say that the impact is still the same. We don't feel worthy enough. We don't feel worthy enough. We don't feel that other people will love us for who we are. And that was part of the reasons why when I got into those different relationships that I hid that I wasn't really myself. And I started, writing about relationships. This was in 2006. I started thinking about everything that I'd gone through and thinking about what I've learned. And I started writing about it. At the time, I started writing about it. My articles were actually picked up by a website called Divorce 360. At the time, I was using the name The Solution Lady. Now I'm back in the groove again. But when we want to help others, and this is where it gets challenging, when we want to help others, just like I want to help you, we have to reveal parts of who we are so that others can identify and maybe learn to trust us. Because I don't talk a lot about my personal life history a lot. to be honest with you, because it's part of who I am, and it's not necessarily something that is always relevant to the conversations that I have with my clients. I think as a coach, I use what I call self-disclosure when I think it's relevant. When I think it's relevant. But now I'm doing a live, and a lot of people know about it now. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Is if you have been abused, know that there's counseling out there. So that's the first thing. And also know that maybe that's why you don't feel worthy of sharing your greatness with the world. Maybe that's why you don't feel like putting yourself out there, is because you don't feel good enough. Hi Tina, nice of you to join me. Thank you so much for being here. You might have to listen to the live from the beginning, because I shared quite a few personal details, but thank you for joining me. I'm wondering, can you identify with some of the things that I talked about in my live today, Tina? I talked about how abuse, and I narrowed it in more on sexual abuse, how that, although we might not know the impact of that, as we get older, how that really prevents us from shining, from becoming all that we can. And of course, when we've been abused, I wasn't abused for a long time. I don't want to minimize my experiences at all. I did at the time. I did when I went through counseling. I minimized those experiences and minimized the impact that it had on my life. So abuse is abuse, okay? No comparing. I used to compare. I used to say, well, I wasn't, they had their clothes on. It's not the same. I've learned that it is the same. They did take advantage of me. It was them exerting a control over me at the time when I was, 10 and 11 and so on. So I don't know if you can identify with that. If you can, please, without getting into any specific details, of course, but write your comments. And if you're looking at the replay, add your comments. And know that, and I'd like you to even state that, I am worthy of all this greatness. I am. And if you have ideas of things you want to learn, or things you want to share with the world, of businesses that you want to get into, if you want to do that, type it in the chat box. Let the world know who you are. The other thing I want to just share before I end is that I do have, and I just launched it. It's not really a big formal launch yet, but I'm doing a 5-day challenge. It's called Take Time for You Now. I find that a lot of women, especially women who have been abused, but may not know that's why they're doing it, a lot of women give their time to others. Their teachers, their nurses, their managers, and they're giving of themselves to others, leaving little time for them. That's what my challenge is all about. Take time for you now. 5-day challenge. I'm going to add the information right below the video. All right, everybody. I think I've talked enough. I always have the intention of going for a few minutes, but there was a lot to say, and I'm sure I'll have probably more things to say about this too. Bottom line, know that you are worthy, and get help if you really think that it's had a huge impact on your life. Now, as you know, coaches don't really go into the past. We try to, help you understand what's happening now. And sometimes there is obviously a relationship with what's happening in the past, but it's not therapy, right? Coaching isn't therapy. Coaching is about helping you understand what may be blocking you so that you can move forward, helping you maybe uncover some of the beliefs that you have so you can move forward. But we don't do any therapy. It's really about helping you become your ideal self, your self, the self that you might have always imagined you being, but for different reasons being held back. And, abuse is one of those reasons. All right. Thanks for watching. I'm about to go off now. Thank you for watching. I'm not sure who's watching now, but please say hello. And I will, who's watching me now? Really nice for you to join me. Yes, I happen to still be on. Oh, hi. Hi, Moogie. That's really nice. Yes, I know we've been chatting for a while now. Thank you for being here. You'll have to watch the live from the beginning, but it is so nice of you to join me. Now you really know what I look like, right? We've been chatting, and I know Moogie lives in South Africa, Uganda, and is going through a challenging time as well. But we all have strengths. We all have inner strengths, and we can all learn to manage what we have. Sometimes it's so hard, and I know, Moogie, you're going through such a difficult time because you don't have finances right now to help pay for your rent. I can't imagine. Well, actually, I can imagine. I know what that's like as well. But know that, and I need to add that when I've been through very difficult times, I have also prayed. Now, I'm not a very religious person, but to be honest with you, when things have been really, really difficult for me, I have gone down on my knees and prayed and kind of let it go. I call him the big guy. I've let it go to the big guy. And somehow things have always worked out. And I'm very optimistic because things have always worked out. So Moogie, you need to know that things will work themselves out. If not now, they will work themselves out, later on. All right. Thanks for joining me. This is my final goodbye. Thanks for joining me, and make sure you look at the live right from the beginning, and I'll add a link to my Take Time for You Now challenge. Bye, everybody. See you on Friday. I'm going to do another one on Friday. Bye.